Hello, Internet. That was the title of the first video uploaded by the 18-year-old creator who had been encouraged by some friends to start uploading on YouTube. The British teen quickly gained prominence, both on his individual channel and through collaborating with another creator who we maybe have already done an episode on. But internet fame and fandom can build a complicated relationship with a platform that gives everything, but demands a lot more back. Welcome to Rewind Time. This episode, Daniel Howell, aka Dan is Not on Fire.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
Welcome to episode 31 of Rewind Time, a YouTube history podcast where each week we examine a noteworthy YouTuber, their channel, and the videos that made them part of YouTube history. This is part 2 of our Dan and Phil trilogy. I'm joined by YouTuber Lucy Livin.
Hello.
And I'm your host, Max. Lucy, how are you going?
I'm well, thank you. And a big hello to everyone who found us through part 1 of the Dan and Phil trilogy.
Shout out fandom.
The fannies, which I've only just said aloud, I think, for the first time, even though I've sort of broadly been a part of the fandom, which we sort of discussed in part 1. But
you're like an associate. You're not part of the family, but you're affiliated.
I think, yeah, I've discussed it in previous episodes, but I'm a fan of a lot of things, but I don't think I've ever truly been like a hardcore fangirl of anything. I just don't think I have the gene.
Well, you went to a Miranda Sings live show and you didn't go to a Dan and Phil one, so I think we can put it on a spectrum.
Okay, my younger brother went and I also went, okay? I didn't know my mum was buying me a ticket. We'll get to that in the episode where we cover that, but that's not this episode.
No.
This episode is about Daniel Howell.
So we normally, kick it off with our familiarity with this YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
This is a bit different because naturally we watched a lot of Dan in Phil's content that we did last week.
Yes.
So, of course, I'm going to bring the perspective of someone who's watched a bunch of his other content, a bunch of Dan and Phil content for the episode that we'll do next week. Yeah. But from your perspective, if you put yourself in, 2013 Lucy's shoes, what were your feelings on Dan's channel, his content versus Phil's? Who did you like more? What was the vibe? Yeah,
well, there's been a trend going around recently where everyone is looking back at their YouTube account to see who they first subscribed to. And while Dan wasn't my first subscription, I think he may have been my third. So I have been watching Dan's content for well over 10 years. Definitely one of my top YouTubers, probably that I've ever watched, like YouTubers that I'm most familiar with, I don't know, a fan of. So yeah, I kind of going this episode, it was a lot of me like revisiting content that I was already familiar with and trying to look at it with a fresh lens. Because when you like have watched something a lot and then you kind of come back to it and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. So revisiting some of these, what I would describe as like milestone videos or highlights, that I watched as they came out at the time with recent new context.
Yes. Well, we'll also be naturally, as we said last week, Dan and Phil, since most of this content was published, not only have announced that they have been in a relationship the entire, sort of extent of the time they've been on the internet.
Yeah.
Yep. They've also done a lot of sort of reaction and retrospectives to this earlier content that's very helpful from our perspective, although they're kind of stealing our show content. They're
stealing our show content.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Because
we have recapping to the podcasters, guys. Although, of course, spoilers, they're also podcasters now. But yeah, so
we're really hitting that Dan and Phil podcast SEO this week.
We're the parody the parody music video of 2025 in that we're just hijacking that related video on the Dan and Phil podcast, like people hijack Miley Cyrus by covering Wrecking Ball.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, that brings us to the topic of today, which is Dan, and he gets his start on YouTube, as you mentioned in your intro, via the proximity of his relationship to Phil, someone who had been on YouTube for a few years earlier than when Dan debuted in 2009.
Yeah, he DM'd him for editing tips.
Yes. In hindsight, we think naturally he wanted more than editing tips. But
they said that themselves. They've since disclosed that that's not us parasocially projecting anything on there.
Yeah, but they famously, Dan appears in Louise and Connor Franta, the long-running series, and we then, of course, get his own channel and his video Hello Internet, which is, I would say, a pretty good summation of what his early videos are like.
This video is iconic. I know Dan has, in retrospective, said that he really can't stand watching this video, which I think is a natural reaction, especially when you've been making content for like over a decade. Like, no one wants to watch their video of themselves with their, like, you know, haircut, their teenage haircut and whatever else. Especially they're like, my name is Dan.
I thought it was fun.
I think it's charming, and I think most people do.
Yeah,
but
in the first videos we've watched in this series, it's quite a good channel introduction. He is like a very charismatic presenter. Like, he is, like Phil, someone who you sort of are like, yes, this person is very much a person that can captivate an audience on YouTube at that time.
Born to be a YouTuber.
Yeah, I didn't want to be like born to be a star. It takes a lot of hard work. These guys,
100%.
They're kind of workaholics to some extent for a lot of their career. But yeah, like these early videos and a few we watched. So something like how to befriend your favorite internet stars, which was like a sort of tongue-in-cheek listicle type video where he explains how he is friends now with Phil, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, you're only friends with Phil to like piggyback off his fame. We love amazing Phil.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just very it's very funny. I think you can immediately tell Dan's sense of humor is a lot darker or like a lot more sarcastic, and
a lot more Shane Dawson, hey?
I don't know if we should use Shane Dawson as a reference point here. It's giving guy who's seen like 20 Shane Dawson videos.
I want to gently correct you and say that they did say that Shane Dawson was an influence. Yes.
Dan said that he watched Shane Dawson Community Channel. I think that one's actually probably a better comparison. Australia's own, Natalie Tran. I think her sense of humor, that really dry, sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek sort of witty vibe is quite similar to Dan's.
But I would say the explicitness of the humor is like classic Shane Dawson.
Yes.
In that even in this video, we have a lot of stuff that from a 2025 lens, you'd be like, oh, well, that's fat shaming. That's bad. And the same as like things about joking about pedophiles, which is something that is like not something that Natalie Tran would do from what I can recall with a lot of frequency. It's a bit more blue.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of creators who make those sort of jokes have privated those videos or they're lost to time.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I would agree. I think that type of more edgy humor is very of the time and was popular.
Well, this video actually I think is an example of when that humor actually is funny, because obviously it's like, sort of the more profane or like explicit the humor is, it's sort of like the bigger risk you take that it's just going to come across as being like crass or offensive, right? But this video has like a cutaway gag where Dan's like, isn't that right, Phil? And then Phil is there in the video tied up like he's been taken hostage.
It's good.
And I think we can talk about it now, but there is an element to which we get to see a different side of like Phil's comedy on Dan's channel, because what's allowed on Dan's channel is quite different to like what's expected on Phil's.
Yeah, there's jokes like later on and like more recently where they joke about how like Phil's content's very it's not even really that he's like family friendly. Well, no, he's more family friendly. They discuss that he's more sponsor and brand friendly. And so on Dan's channel, and then also like obviously more recent content, they've sort of been able to like, he's been able to relax a little bit.
So Phil is in these early videos.
Yeah.
They do sort of some typical Q&A type stuff where Phil will be in the video answering sort of fan questions, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Dan and Phil Games doesn't come into the picture until quite a few years after Dan has been a successful solo YouTuber, and obviously Phil for much longer as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that the majority of the Dan and Phil shared content from this time is split between one of their two channels.
Yeah, they sort of take turns. Like each of them has like maybe a series that goes on their respective channels. Yeah, it's pretty evenly split.
A very funny early quirk, which they recognize themselves in one of their retro videos. And something I forgot to mention in the Phil episode is that when you look at the videos on Phil's channel early in the time, sometimes they will say something like doing XYZ with Phil and Dan.
Or Phil and Dan's day in Manchester or something like that. Yeah,
and there's like multiple versions. It was like, Phil is like, no, I'm number one.
My channel, it's my name. Me first.
Yeah, Phil and Dan. And then, of course, Dan's like, well, no, it's Dan and Phil. And then, naturally, that's where we ended up.
Well,
so,
as I said, it rolls off the tongue better.
So the remainder of sort of Dan's early content going into what we sort of described last week as the Dan and Phil mainstream invasion, the BBC show and the like, is similar to Phil. He's doing things like interactive quizzes, which is sort of a video style of the time. There's some sort of a classic Die Emo Scum video, which I found amusing, which was like him pulling up all of the hate comments that he gets on videos.
Yep.
And he makes a very sort of salient observation about YouTube where he said that the intelligence of comments is inversely proportional to the percentage of your audience that's from the YouTube front page. As a creator, does this ring true with you?
Look, I may have had some videos recently gain a number of views that I would say is outside of my regular data point thing, and I have received a lot more comments as of recent from people who I would say are not historical viewers of mine. Some recently in the last couple of days that come to mind is someone who said that the speed of which I talk is of someone who has taken a lot of Peruvian marching powder, which is like kind of an insane...
it's very like boomer.
It's a boomer-esque insult.
Haven't heard that one in a while.
Someone else basically also just said like, I clicked on this and lost my will to live, which is good. So yeah, and I don't normally get those comments, but yes. So in summary, that theory, the graph, I would say, is correct. The more a piece of content goes viral and kind of goes out and is pushed out to people, the more you're going to get those friendly new faces who just come on to tell you that they hate you and they wish you would die.
But as we know, a view's a view. So,
and for every one of those comments, you have to acknowledge the thousands of people who silently watched it, gave it a like, and are enjoying it in their own mind. But yeah, which I will say, I think even from an early point, Dan kind of engages with the concept of being a YouTuber and like internet culture and fandom, because a lot of the content on his channel is kind of discussing internet culture with some of his series that we'll chat about. But I think something that I really enjoyed is I don't know if we would call it like metatextual, but like a lot of YouTubers sometimes don't acknowledge the relationship directly with their audience, or in that way of like, this is what the experience of being a creator is like. And I think Dan has done that from like a very early point, and obviously later on makes some particularly, I think, engaging content about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
One other thing, and you mentioned the influence of community channel before.
Yeah. And
I think it's most sort of telling in that Dan will do videos that are really reminiscent of like Natalie's sort of classic storytime cross sketch comedy video.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is something like the video I Can't Sleep from 2012 is what starts as like a story time that you'd see on something like Phil's channel, but it uses cutaway gags where he will then recreate the story that he's telling and use that for like a comedic purpose. So they recreate the dreams, filming it like they would a sketch, and then it cuts back to Dan doing a vlog. And it's just like it's a lot, obviously it's a higher effort version of a vlog that a lot of YouTubers will do where they just deliver it straight to camera.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like breaks it up, makes it more dynamic that way. But it's naturally a lot easier to do like physical comedy when you can shoot like new scenes essentially.
Yeah.
Or do joke setups like that.
Yeah. Bits of like Dan like lying on the floor crying and stuff like that, I think really, really adds to it. And actually, one thing I want to just briefly acknowledge is someone left a really great comment on the Phil episode talking about how, and obviously it's really tough because we try and keep these episodes to like somewhat of a time limit. But Phil, his content when he does story times, he tends to mix in like animation.
Yep.
And like kind of a different format. So it's just interesting seeing how the two of them make what I think they both describe as like light entertainment or like like story time kind of piece to camera content, but the way that they both approach it in like different creative approaches I think is really unique. But obviously you can tell that they both have not like the YouTuber gene. Just makes me think of Riverdale and like the serial killer gene.
The serial killer gene.
I have the serial killer
Betty,
gene.
you have the serial killer gene.
But they have like that YouTuber gene of just being like creative, I guess, in different approaches.
I do want to, because we're the only people I'm sure to have realised this, on Natalie Tran. In 2013, Dan made a video called New Year, New You, which was a play on how people set, New Year's unrealistic New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
Almost 10 years later, Natalie Tran would also make a video called New Year, New You with the same concept. So was she incepted this idea?
The Ouroboros of YouTube creator.
Has the influencee become the influencer? Do we need to, like Taylor Swift, does Dan need to sue Natalie Tran for some profit share?
No.
Come on. Anyway, so at this point...
You were sitting on that one, weren't you?
There's just there's some things that we uncover doing this watch that potentially no one has ever put together before. We're creating novel insight.
What episode are we on? Episode 31?
Episode 31.
I feel like I have given you like YouTube brain because they're...
A very unhelpful one though, where I can only talk about things that happened 15 years ago.
Didn't that happen to you recently though at like some type of work?
Oh, yeah, okay. Indulge me guys, tangent. But someone asked me what I was doing on the weekend, and I was like, I do this podcast about YouTube. Do you know Dan and Phil? And they were like, oh yeah, but I'm more of a Natalie Tran, Ryan Higa fan. And I was like, previously I would have been like, what is that?
Who is that?
But then I was like, oh yeah, like to be honest, I quite like Natalie, but like Ryan's humor is not really my thing, but I can, engage with it. And they were like, oh wow, yeah, cool. And we had a little chat about it. And then they asked me about something else relating to this era of YouTube. And I was like, I have no idea about that. And they're like, but what do you mean? You host a YouTube podcast? And I was like, oh no, but I didn't watch any of this YouTube. I'm watching it for the first time. Like Lucy's the one that knows about it. And they're like, you watch it all for the first time? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, wow, that's a lot of work. And I was like, it is. I'm like, well, that's although spoilers guys, there are some creators coming up that I'll be the expert in. And Lucy will be the host.
Yeah,
so I'm very much looking forward to that.
One of the BritTube satellite people, which I would say Dan and Phil are also like satellite BritTube. That was also some discussion in the comments. We do read them.
We've seen the Getty images of them hanging out with Zoella. So
there's a picture of them. No, I think BritTube is sort of like, you could describe it as like the British invasion.
Yeah.
BritTube invasion.
Zoella is John Lennon, Paul McCartney combined.
Zoella is like BritTube patient zero. And then I would say there's like satellite, what do you call it? It's like a strain of a disease. It's not a disease. Do you know what I mean? Like they're variants. Like Dan and Phil are like, they're not like the BritTube like gang, but they are satellite members because they're connected through Louise. Are we up to...
Look, yeah, I do want to talk about...
Yeah, collaborators.
By this time, Dan and Phil, they are on the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
They are in like BBC content, like
moved to London from Manchester.
Exactly. The iconic video of them playing Innuendo Bingo, which we saw a clip of on Phil's channel, but we get to watch the full version on Dan's channel. I just made a note being like, I love this video. It's so funny. And they actually put it into a sort of a vlog where they're like, oh, we're here in Scotland because we were invited to the premiere of the Pixar movie Brave.
So random.
And they're like shooting arrows and stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this seems like a typical influencer event.
Dan's doing the, like, what's that Scottish thing where you like pick up the log and you like throw it into the air?
Gotta admit, haven't seen Brave, so I'll defer to you on this.
But it was also in that movie we watched, Maid of Honor, that like horrific...
Oh. Yep.
Where they throw the log.
He did that. The games before the
and
wedding.
It's also, I think, I don't know if we acknowledged it in the previous episode. No, we definitely did. Where it's only in these vlogs, which are pretty few and far between. They do, both of them individually joke about not leaving the house and being like extremely introverted. It's only in these vlogs where they occasionally interact with other people that we see how insanely tall they are. This is one of them. I'm like, yeah, that log, no feet for an extremely large British man with emo hair.
Even in modern times, recently there was a fan meme where it was a footage of Pedro Pascal at a premiere of a movie, and the retweet of it was something like, "You'll never guess who appears here," and they're just filming Pedro sort of at like a middle distance. And then just right in front of the camera, a giant Dan and Phil walk across, and they're just towering over like the whole rest of the crowd. I think
they describe themselves as like Titans from Attack on Titan, and I think that's a really silly comparison.
It also, of course, and all right, we got to hold the Dan and Phil chat.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. It's tough. It's all like one big.
You can talk about some other boys now, though.
Pot.
All right.
Okay.
Because when Dan is breaking through, doing radio stuff, we get some famous YouTube collaborations, including one called How to Speak Internet with Jack and Finn. I looked at this and was like, what? I literally have no idea who this is. I was like, why are we watching this video? And then
it's like
you were like,
the second or third most, I think it's in his top 3 most viewed videos on his channel. It's a really popular video.
I mean, Jack and Finn clearly have some
Hashtag
sort of
Jack's Gap.
Yeah, enduring appeal. Can you just tell people who that is?
Jack's Gap, I believe it's Jack and Finn Harry's. I want to say that's her last name. It was a channel about, and it's taking me back. It was about a gap year, about going on a gap year between.
Gappers, where are you going on gappers, Matt? Yeah, that's a very English thing to do.
That was insane. I would never do an impression like that to offend anyone. But no, they created the YouTube channel, I believe, about their gap year between school and uni.
Yeah. Guys, I can't remember exactly, but the reason I did that, I'm pretty sure they're posh, right? That came across in the video.
I don't know if they're posh or...
No?
I don't know.
Both of their parents have blue links on Wikipedia, so what does that say?
Okay, maybe they're posh. But they, obviously, for a high school Lucy, who was subscribed to the channel, they're 2 British twins who were cute, and that's fine because they were older than me. So, but
they make content. It's like, besides going on the gap year,
they do like YouTuber TM content as well. But the gap year stuff was pretty crazy. They fully went on like a round the world trip, and I believe it was like sponsored by some big brand. Anyway, we'll do an episode about them, I think. It's good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
With so much fervor and enthusiasm. Thank you. But this video is pretty iconic. The thumbnail as well just has the word FAP in it, which is managed to pass by YouTube censorship. Yeah, pretty iconic collab.
We also, around this time, are introduced to an ongoing series, which is Internet Support Group, which is a listener submitted advice video where Dan rules on all sorts of like issues that people send in sort of a is it agony art?
Agony art.
Yeah, sort of format. Naturally he isn't the most how do I say it? Empathetic of advice givers, which I think is the source of the humor, right?
A lot of the time he's just telling people to like not do that, or being like,
yes,
you should be ashamed of yourself, which is like I think a relationship he has with his viewers that actually continues through until...
It's antagonistic, but in a way...
In an affectionate way.
Yeah, well, it seems like a lot of them are just gluttons for punishment, right? If I'm watching some of the live shows, like, he's taking shots at the audience, and it's the same as when he does jokes, the girls, they just be screaming.
They just be cheering.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what's the opposite of a praise kink? A shame kink? Does the do the fannies have shame kink?
I think they're to
comment
an extent,
below.
They're just there's nothing they can do. Even when Dan vanished for several years, he re-emerged and the fandom were like, "Of course we forgive you."
Yeah, I mean,
welcome back, King.
Yeah, it's a pretty. I mean, we'll get into it, but yeah, probably one of the, I would say, the strongest parasocial audience relationships I've seen in my time on the internet. It's a very powerful fandom with a PH.
And speaking of powerful fandoms, the crossover with Tyler Oakley that Phil did, I believe in the same shooting session, because it would make sense. Dan and Phil live together. Tyler's in the apartment. We're going to do some videos together.
Which apartment?
Oh, we'll talk about that next episode. But yeah, Tyler Oakley is in the UK shooting stuff with Dan and Phil. The video that we get is just called Dan and Tyler Being Offensive. This was released in 2014. And you see that title and you're like, uh-oh, I don't want to have to cancel my wholesome
boys.
king Tyler Oakley, like meeting Barack. But they just play Cards Against Humanity, which is like
the most 2014 thing you can do.
And are you even being offensive if you're just playing a game?
You're just playing
it's
the
like
role
acting.
of someone who is being offensive, right?
And this video is pretty much as you imagine them playing Cards Against Humanity.
Yep.
But of note, Tyler is wearing a Troye Sivan sweatshirt.
Wow. Her
And
web connects them all.
I know. Well, like, I'm kind of surprised that we never, as far as we can tell, have gotten a Troye
Cameo?
Dan X Phil event moment or otherwise something to discuss besides this.
It would be crazy if like they got him on the podcast now.
Well, giving modern day Phil looks like Troye Sivan's older brother. I'm like, how long is it going to take?
Surely there's like an image of them together. Like surely they've met because Troye did like videos with Zoella. Troye did videos with Tyler Oakley. Why
he's
not?
coming from
Dan and
Australia. He
Phil?
probably didn't have a lot of time. You know, he's only going with his queens.
Anyway,
but yeah,
sorry, just us writing YouTube fanfic live on the pod episode.
tying off some of these collaborations in this era, we do get more collaborations with Louise, Sprinkle of Glitter.
Diva.
Long-running bestie of Dan and Phil from a content perspective. Definitely someone they collab with
See?
repeatedly.
That's the connection to the BritTube, the Brit Crew.
Yeah.
Because the Sprinkle of Glitter was part of the Brit Crew.
And then
She was chummy. Guys, come on.
we also have, much like How to Speak Internet, we get How to Speak Lad with Dan and Connor.
Oh,
So How
Connor
to Speak,
Franta.
yeah, How to Speak Lad is like
Again.
a lad is like a British chat. No, hang on.
A British
lad,
Chad?
No, a lad in the UK context is
Isn't it
I'm
just a
just saying
boy?
like one of the boys. Yeah, but he's a bit naughty. I'm trying to say what the
Like a
Australian
bro?
equivalent is. It's not like a bogan because like
No.
you can be like a lad on the town.
It's not a it's not an esche.
No.
No. It's just like a dude, right?
No,
a
but there's like
guy.
laddish behavior.
Yeah, one of the boys. Like hashtag boys chat vibes.
Like if you're familiar with the Sidemen, because they obviously talk about the Sidemen. Well, sorry, they mention KSI in this video.
KSI mentioned.
KSI is a lad. KSI's style of content, the Sidemen, that is lad content. Lad Bible, guys. Like
Okay. Let's not swear on the podcast, please.
Anyway, but yeah, Dan and Connor, are you familiar with them? Like Connor
Yes.
Franta? Yeah.
Connor Franta. For anyone familiar with like it's like semi-recent.
Well, we just
Connor
talked about
Franta.
Troye Sivan. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I'm learning.
Once again,
I'm learning.
I know. It's all sinking in. So Connor Franta is also like 1 degree of separation from Troye. That's why I'm like, surely they've met. Can you just like Google and see if there's a photo of them all together? I swear, like surely. But Connor Franta, also a YouTuber who we will also probably cover at some point, has since confirmed that he was in fact dating Troye Sivan. That all happened this year. It was like we had Frona confirmation and fan confirmation all in the 1 year. Big year for fangirls. But yeah, Connor Franta collaborating with Dan.
So allegedly, they were the
That's
first
literally
to
a
play
photo.
his song on BBC.
Okay.
And there are photos.
There's plenty of
Is that
photos
Troye
of them.
there?
Yes, that's Troye Sivan. There's plenty of photos. There's literally a selfie of Dan and Troye in like black and white on Instagram. Okay, that one's edited by fans to have cat ears.
I think there's 2 photos, right?
Yeah. It's giving confirmed that they've met.
So they definitely met.
Yeah.
So
All right.
correction
Her
for me
web
5
does
minutes
connect them
ago. We do have a natural connection. But it was Tyler who's wearing this thing, and then Tyler's in that photo.
Yeah.
So
And
maybe
Connor
people can tell.
Franta collaborated. So there's lots of that friend group, I would say, or like collaborator. It's not like a group. It's just that they kind of, I would say, shared audience members or had like similar types of content. Like Connor Franta, Troye Sivan, and Tyler Oakley, and then Dan and Phil all kind of made light entertainment.
Yep.
Like YouTuber TM content.
We get also already in this era some Dan reacting to his old videos, which is funny because it's like he'd only been a YouTuber for like 5 or 6 years, but he reacted to like Hello Internet and was already like, oh, this is like so cringe. And I'm like, oh, well, you have another whole half of your YouTube career to come, so let's hold some of the reactions.
He was tired.
And we're getting to it, but yeah, you could tell that he was potentially running out of steam by like 2015 or so.
Not running out of steam, but yes, he was probably experiencing what has since become a phenomenon of YouTuber burnout.
Yes. Well, they're also Dan and Phil as a duo. There's content from that on the channel from this era, specifically the reveal that they are publishing a book. The amazing book is not on fire.
YouTuber books, man.
This YouTuber books, please tell.
So specifically also linked to, I want to say the Brick Crew kind of kicked this off, and then it was like also picked up by just YouTubers more broadly. But YouTuber books was this big kind of bubble in publishing in around 2013 to 2016, something like that. So who had a book? Zoella, Alfie, PewDiePie, Tyler Oakley has 2.
All right.
I think Shane Dawson. Everyone had a book.
Harry Potter was over. The publishers were like, how do we get kids to read? And they're like,
but
doesn't matter if they read the book, but if they see their favorite YouTuber and the YouTuber tells them to buy the book, they'll probably buy it.
And they're all launching their books around like October for the Christmas gifting. I will say I haven't read The Amazing Book Is Not on Fire, but I have heard from reviews that of the YouTuber books, this one is attributed as being like it's like giving that they actually gave a shit.
Yeah.
Because some of the other YouTubers phoned it in or had ghostwriters and kind of put their name on it and was just like a bit of which is a valid way to make money. But apparently, Dan and Phil did actually put their Dan and Phil.
Anyway, well, that is something that I briefly want to touch on about them caring, because at this time they're also beginning to do live shows, and I'm someone who has seen YouTube live shows for the context of this podcast, and they have been so far what I would describe as akin to a high school talent show level of production. But the stuff that you see from the Dan and Phil live shows, even from the very first
the Amazing Tour is Not on Fire,
is like far and away like immediately a professional production, something where I'm like, oh, you are justifiably charging money for this. It's not a thing where you simply pay to be in the physical presence of your creator and then he does awkward dancing while music plays.
Who are you describing?
Ryan Higa, Sydney 2011 tour. But
Ryan
anyway,
Higa. I think the James Charles ones.
A bunch of the YouTubers we've watched have done tours that are cash grabs in an extent.
Yeah.
I don't think that, like, obviously they show up, so like they fulfill that, you know.
We need to start going to YouTuber tours when they come to town, or we could do an episode ranking YouTuber tours.
Do YouTubers even still tour though, or is it just Instagram like meet and greets? I
don't know.
If there's some, we can go. I commit
great.
To it. Yeah.
Thank you. Sometimes I just think about that video of James Charles singing New Rules by Dua Lipa, and he's like doing a performance, and it's very special to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other series of note from 2015 is the top Dan memes of Year X.
Yeah.
Which is a somewhat annual, naturally some years it gets a skip, meme review that Dan does. Very reminiscent of PewDiePie's meme review series, right? Mm-hmm. Naturally this is done annually, not whenever he sort of wants. But we do get a sort of introduction to what I would describe as like the more recent Dan commentary content, where he is really like spitting his thoughts, feelings, opinions. We're getting some analysis. We're getting some criticism about things that are going on. Like this 2015 one, he does mention the Kanye West presidency run, which obviously that he didn't win, but
no,
he does it in a joking way. But
yeah.
we're beginning to get, I think, a more political version of his content.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking about how often Kanye is brought up in Dan's content, and I'm like, I wonder how recent events are sitting. Anyway,
honestly, the guys seem pretty happy. I don't think they're too
no,
worried.
I'm not being like, can you imagine? I'm just being like, that's really great and really happy for you, but I demand to know your thoughts about Kanye West. No, it's just because as we were going back, I was like, wow, so many mentions of Kanye. Yeah.
We do get a lot of Peppy the Frog, though, in this video, which, much like
one.
Kanye, actually, unlike Kanye, a character that's unfairly maligned.
We're not going to get into that.
No, but it was just funny to see that in hindsight.
But I also think, yeah, they sort of serve as both kind of critiques and interactions of the fandom, as well as kind of like a year in review, which as Dan sort of becomes a little bit less of a frequent and consistent uploader, having that kind of year in review, it sort of feels like a Christmas family gathering kind of vibe where you're kind of seeing your cousin who you only see like a couple of times a year, and he's kind of catching you up on all the goss from the year. And I actually, one thing I really like about Dan and Phil is like when they kind of will like just discuss things that happened and sort of give like behind the scenes of, oh, and then we went and filmed like this thing with these people, but it went like horribly wrong behind the scenes and like XYZ was happening. I felt
you
that's
like
all.
the DVD commentary to the YouTube video.
Yeah. I really like that stuff. So
Well,
that's what those videos feel like.
You mentioned that the upload frequency declines, and around this point, and Dan has never been a super prolific uploader, especially compared to even Phil, but around the top Dan memes moving through the late 2010s, there is definitely a fall off in the frequency of uploads. So we still get top Dan meme reviews of the next few years. We get him changing his channel name in 2017.
Important. The rebrand from Dan Is Not On Fire to Daniel Howell.
Well, yeah, and even in that video, he makes a note that part of the reason he did it was because of the absurdity that he signed a letter, which was written by Owen Jones, who's someone very much affiliated with sort of Corbynism and UK Labour, which is it's all political stuff. But he was like, it's very silly to have all of these like serious celebrities signing their name, and then it's just like, Dan Is Not On Fire YouTuber. So that's part of the reason he changed the name of the channel. It also, from a reading perspective, you look at it and you go, Danis Not On Fire? So, like, legibility, like...
I think that's just you.
He's got to improve it.
I think that's just
new
you.
to the channel, Danis? Who's Danis? No? Am I wrong?
I think
Amazing Phil, no confusion, but Dan Is Not On Fire.
it's also because it's all lowercase.
Yeah.
So it's Dan Is Not On Fire, or Danny Snot on Fire.
Yeah, exactly.
It's giving Sue's an album. Sue's
album launch. Yeah.
What is it called? Susan Boyle, like the Susan Boyle's album, where it's like Susan album party, but then it read like Sue's anal party.
Very relevant for this episode.
Susan Boyle's a member of the Brick Crew.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. The numbers that the song her
dream,
auditions did, yeah, exactly. She's definitely Brick Crew worthy. Other stuff. So we're the sort of content.
Sorry, Susan Boyle hanging out with Zoella. Susan Boyle in the Getty images for the Zoella beauty launch party.
Content frequency decreasing, and we get more videos like Trying to Live My Truth, which are sort of, I would say, not as far as something like Ryan Heger, where we had this cycle for like multiple years of him sort of rattling the chains of his YouTube cage, where he was like, oh, I just want to make all this creative stuff, but you guys don't watch it, and I feel like I'm just doing the same stuff and I want to grow. It's definitely not to that extent, but you can definitely sense, and he even says so in these later videos, he's like, oh, okay, like I don't know if I sort of love being a content creator. There are all these stresses involved with making YouTube videos, and it's like not that great for my mental health. And that's something that he is obviously quite open about. and it sort of makes sense why around this time he stepped away from YouTube for several years.
Yes, this hiatus comes pretty soon after the Daniel, or somewhat soon after the Daniel and depression video, where he does go a bit more in depth into his official depression diagnosis. He's sort of like vaguely, or kind of he's always sort of like talked about his emotions or like mental health in kind of a more like vague sense, or kind of just been like, oh, I feel depressed. But in this video he like explicitly talks about what it's like having depression, which at the time I think like we were still in the era of like mental health not being as like broadly talked about. So it was a pretty cool moment to have a content creator come out and be like, hey, I have this like mental health diagnosis and this is how it impacts me and my life. But yes, shortly after, the very famous hiatus begins.
Now, men's mental health is one of the most talked about and trumpeted corporate crusades that anyone in the office, Movember,
the male loneliness,
have a chat with your mate, are you okay day,
male loneliness epidemic.
Loneliness epidemic, the fact that we even know this.
You joke about it. Obviously men's mental health is, or just mental health in general is important, but yes.
Yeah, look, so he was a pioneer for making it more acceptable for men to talk about their mental health diagnosis. And so for that, we got to applause.
Yeah, okay. We joke about like Men with a Microphone podcast. May I remind you that you're a man with a microphone, so watch yourself. No, but it was a really great piece of content. And I think it was in a similar style to Dan's previous content, which is like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's sort of in a space between video essay and then kind of like his original like story time, like piece to camera. And then I think this piece of content is quite formative, I think, in some of what I would say are the highlight or career defining videos on his channel that came after the hiatus. But the hiatus was 2-3 years, I think.
3 years, yes. But before that, we're only getting sort of 5 videos a year, and some of them are just like, hey, we've got a new tour, me and Phil.
Yeah, they're not all like full
yeah.
channel videos. Some of them are promotional. And like, but to be fair, if you're going on, and some of these tours were international tours with like tens of tour dates across multiple countries, I'm not like, as a fan, being like, I'm owed more than this. I'm like, that's fine. But as someone who did watch both of them, I did somewhat notice, okay, there's another video from Phil. Like, Phil's uploading pretty regularly. And when Dan would upload, it felt like more like, oh, Dan's uploaded a video. It was definitely more of that kind of vibe.
I mean, I was prepped for it to be like sort of a Michelle Phan, like vanishes. But I'm like, no, this guy was still being kept busy being in full international tours and still being in the apartment where his partner is filming content like full time.
But
like, I get that it was a step back compared to before, but I was like, he was still around.
But also, and we'll get into it in the other episode, but this also, they took a hiatus from Dan and Phil Games, which was, is that right? I think it all lines up. The hiatus was all around the same time. I'm getting a little, I'm sure.
Dan and Phil Games, yes,
so
did go on pause.
It was, and that was a channel where even if Dan wasn't uploading regularly, Dan and Phil Games is pretty much like every week, and they had like Spooky Week, which was like every day. So you're getting a lot of Dan and Phil Games content.
Spooky Week coming back this week.
I know. Yeah. I'm so excited.
Spoilers.
Spooky Week. But so that's...
Yeah, that actually, the Dan and Phil Games absent, because that was much more frequent uploading. Yeah.
So
that would hurt.
It was sort of like a lot of people, I think, who were subscribed to all 3 channels. It was kind of like, oh, we weren't getting like main channel Dan solo videos, but we were getting like Dan content as part of Dan and Phil. And so then it's like 3 years, no Dan.
Yes.
Dan's out.
We get a return to the channel in 2019 in the video titled, basically, I'm Gay. Obviously, that's a very helpful title to the video. You can tell immediately what it's about.
Yeah.
But we get a sort of a longer, like 45 minutes long.
Sorry, I'm laughing because they talk about the difference between
him and Phil's. Yeah, well, as we mentioned last week, Phil has a similar video but it is simply about 4 minutes long of him being like, oh yeah, I've always been gay. I'm just letting you guys know, and I'll be making more content. See you next week. But no, for Dan, so he has previously done a Draw My Life, where you get the sense that he grew up in quite an uncomfortable sort of, I would say, stereotypically English conservative environment with plenty of homophobia, and that a lot of that is internalized, and we get a long version of that in this video, and Dan speaks sort of at length about how growing up in that environment, how he internalized a lot of this homophobia, and when he realized he was gay, it was obviously incredibly distressing given all of the sort of conception of what he thought being gay was from growing up in that environment. And this video is naturally quite different to some of the stuff that's been on the channel before, just given it's quite a long sort of story time style video.
I would say it's essentially a video essay.
Yeah, and it's something that I think if you've seen ContraPoints' videos, that was what I drew as a YouTube baby. That was my sort of I was like,
format
oh, yes,
comparison.
okay, I have seen it quite like this. It's almost like video essay is the correct term. From a millennial perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a single person podcast.
Or it's like a speech.
Yeah. Definitely. And this video I think is really good.
Yeah, you watched it. So I watched it probably the day it came out. I was subscribed and I was like, whoa, okay. Kind of big YouTube
You're
event.
like, yes,
TM.
T. You're like, it's going to be triumphant. It's going to be he's going to be like, I'm a diva. And then you get in and he's like, so I was bullied relentlessly for years.
I think the thumbnail kind of accurately sets up the vibe. But yeah, as someone who was just watching it for the first time, you really liked it. You enjoyed it.
I really like all of Dan's recent stuff for the most part in the context of the people we've watched for this series. I think that it's really quite difficult to sort of toe the line between comedy and insight, right? Because it's a lot of comedy now in almost a post-Nanette world, you know what I mean?
I knew you were going to bring up Nanette.
It's oh, I'm just going to do a little sort of political speech, but there won't really be many jokes or punchlines, but it's the audience will feel good, you know? And there's even all people in the Joe Rogan universe where it's the comedians just do talking about various political issues of the day. And it's not funny at all. Whereas Dan remains committed to the joke, essentially, even though he is often the butt of the joke and the circumstances here are pretty grim. I think he makes a lot of these serious topics palatable to the Dan and Phil audience, but also casual viewers like me. It's just really engaging. Like I said, it reminds me of when I would watch more ContraPoints and why I was attracted to watching Contra at that time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it really, it's beautifully written, really great editing. I loved the illustrations included by the artist Shitty Watercolor, who he uses again in a later video, I believe. But yeah, it's a beautiful video, and I also think really, even though it is a 45-minute runtime, I think it really actually is quite succinct in getting across the points that he wants to get across about.
Well, it's in part the story of his whole life, you know. So 45 minutes is maybe that long.
It's a Draw My Life sequel. It's a Talk My Life. But yeah, really great video. And a lovely return to YouTube, and you can see, that this, and he's talked about this since that taking this hiatus was really important for him to basically, in his words, I kind of figure his shit out, and that he kind of was saying that he put all of the thoughts around his sexuality into a box and kind of shoved it away because he was worried it was going to interfere with the Dan is on fire and the Dan and Phil of it all in his career. He thought that was going to, be a risk to it. So, but also equally, as we were saying, he was experiencing burnout, and it was all kind of linked together. He kind of couldn't really push through the burnout without dealing with with what was going on. So, yeah.
This video, top 3 most popular on the channel.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really been talking of views this episode, as we said last week with Phil's stuff. A lot of these are getting all 1 million views.
Yeah, they're all cracking a million.
Several mil. But this video did get 13 million views, and it was only uploaded 6 years ago.
Quite the YouTube darling, which I think leads us into the next video on Dan's channel, which is another banger, another highlight, I really like this video.
They're just really high effort.
They're just really, you have to
compared to what we've watched a lot for this series. Like, no offense, like the YouTubers, you got to publish videos to make money, to, sell ads. So you don't get time to really craft something over an extended period of time.
Don't cry, craft.
Don't cry, craft.
I feel like that's maybe Dan's approach to content, sort of therapeutic. But obviously 13 million views on a coming out video. Wow, YouTube said, we love you. And that leads us into the next video, ironically called Why I Quit YouTube. This also being...
Why I Quit BuzzFeed.
Yeah, hashtag Why I Quit BuzzFeed.
See, I know what that means now.
Wow.
Guys, earlier in this podcast, I literally thought when people did like Why I Quit BuzzFeed, I was like, I didn't know they worked at BuzzFeed. Like, what's going on there?
But this video was also, I would say, another appointment viewing for me at the time when this dropped. This was only a couple of years ago. This was a big deal video. And also, if I may, just put in some like personal context. By this point, I was also a YouTuber, and being a YouTuber was a portion of my income. So
you're like, damn, I've missed the boat. Dan says it's over.
No, but
no, this video is, again,
a banger.
One I think that we both really enjoyed, you at the time, and in retrospective, me watching it now. And it actually has a lot in common, I think, with our analysis on this podcast, ironically.
Yeah.
In that Dan sort of breaks down his like various issues with having to be a YouTuber, and to give it to you in the sort of dot point form. It's things like he feels conflicted about having to do sponsorships. It's where we also get the ironic thing where he's like, Phil loves sponsored posts, and we're sitting there being like, yeah, he has to pay for a house, bro.
The Faust mortgage.
Which is so swag.
Shout out to Dragon City.
Thank you, Phil. And then also he even asks, he's like, why do like all these YouTubers like burn out and like quit making content? Like it's a case of like, you have like there's a relentless demand for you to just make new stuff all the time, and you can see the analytics in the back end that encourage you to either like make content that you might not like, but it's number 1 of 10 videos.
The way he described the feeling of seeing a 1 out of 10 and you get the confetti animation, I was like, I'm so seen. Getting the 1 out of 10 confetti is like true endorphins, really good vibes.
Do they still do that?
Yes.
I've never seen it on our
I
account.
haven't happened. You should log in on the browser. You'll see it.
I do. I might just be ad blocking.
Okay. I definitely get the confetti. But yeah, as he said, if it's anything less than 1 of 10, no confetti for you. Even if it's like still performing well, still performing good. I think he really expertly captures the like quote unquote like struggles of being a YouTuber, but it can really be applied to any creative who like works for money, which is if you want to make a living as a creator. I think this video is really great. But also what I really like about it is with classic Dan humor, he really balances it with the like, cry for the poor YouTuber, that kind of vibe, because I think that is something that we've talked about it previously on the podcast, but some YouTubers, when they're like complaining or like not complaining, but they're just addressing like their own struggles. And obviously you can't just be like, oh, well, this isn't a big deal compared to everything else. Like you have to take everyone's struggles like within context of their own lives. But I think it's hard sometimes for creators to feel like they can discuss it without coming across as being ungrateful or,
Yeah, well, I think
and sometimes they do come across that way.
Yeah, well, Dan is like, I didn't like doing YouTube, so he quit. He actually quit.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people we see, this is the most grating thing, is they're like, I don't like doing YouTube, but they're still publishing videos every week. So it's like, why am I stuck here in the misery chamber with you, someone who's doing something you don't enjoy? It's like, that is punishing.
Yeah. I actually have a couple of creators who I really like, and I have respected them because they have maybe gone through a brief period where they've maybe addressed their audience and said, hey guys, just letting you know, I'm like having a bit of a tough time with making videos at the moment. And then they actually step away for like a period where they maybe infrequently upload. And then they come back and you can tell that they've kind of recharged those creative batteries or have a different approach, and they're like happy to be back. But it's always like when it's sort of like rocking up to work every day and just saying, hey guys, I actually hate working here. And you're like their co-worker, and you're like, you can just quit, you can just leave.
Yeah. But that's the thing where we also have to acknowledge that not everyone can just quit, right?
No, like, of course not.
If you make YouTube your job, then a lot of people just don't have the financial situation where they can just be like, oh, I'm not feeling creatively fulfilled, so I'm just going to quit my job for a bit. So you would be just stuck making videos.
And I know this from like knowing creators in real life, but also from creators sharing this online. For a lot of creators, especially those who have become creators from like a really young age, they don't have like another job that they have done. They don't necessarily have like, and obviously they could move in another creative field, but it's not as easy as just being like, oh well, I'll just change jobs, because it's like my job is YouTuber, you know. And alternatively as well, I think a lot of YouTubers struggle with the fact that the money they make being a YouTuber, oftentimes if they, you know, move back into like a traditional corporate role or whatever else, that they're going to see their, you know, their salary decrease potentially. Not always, it depends, but it's things like that where people, what is it like? It's like the golden handcuffs, you know, where they're really in a situation that many people would kill to be in, and be really grateful for, but equally that doesn't mean you can't have, you know.
Shmo Yoho in 2019 auto-tuning Martin Luther King videos to get 300k views, and they were like, oh, why are we still doing this? But we got to pay our 4 mortgages. Anyway, so this video also has an extended section where Dan specifically outlines how he was courted by YouTube after his coming out video, and they wanted him to not like go off and do stuff off platform. They're like, you can do all of your big creative endeavors on YouTube. You can do them as YouTube originals. And they'd done YouTube originals for The Amazing Tour.
Yeah.
So he was like, that's all good. And
Logan Paul's movie, The Thinning.
Correct. Yeah, that's a thing. And
Escape the Night.
And so, yeah, Dan was working on a show. It was sort of like any character-based British sitcom where
you know what it gives?
What does it give?
Please Like Me by Josh Thomas.
I guess. Sort of.
It's like semi-auto.
Or like HBO's Girls.
Yeah. It's like Dan is playing a version of himself.
Yes.
And it's sort of a variation on his actual life and kind of what he's been going through.
And when he gave the pitch, I was like, wow, this doesn't seem like a fit for something that would be on a YouTube original. They do like The Karate Kid. And it seemed like YouTube at some point agreed, because they basically strung him along for an extended period of time. And then, of course, were like, due to changing corporate priorities, Google can't commit to this. So you should just go away.
That would be crushing. And it was crushing. He talks about the fact that he worked on it for years and was like kind of just... And he also felt, which I think, you know, a lot of people have had this experience in their career where they've been like working on a big project or something and everyone goes, actually, we're just not going to do this anymore. It's embarrassing, because he was working with like production teams. Obviously, he would have met a lot of really great connections through working in the BBC and doing the stage show. Like he would have had all the people in his corner. And even he said he was going to put some of his personal like savings into it.
This was actually quite uncomfortable, and I'm almost glad that the show didn't get made, or at least I'm glad it wasn't made on YouTube, because they at some point were like, oh, well, you know, the money just doesn't seem like it's going to be like very commercial. And so he offered to pay a third of the budget of the show, which would be, he said, all of the cash he'd earned through like his entire YouTube career, which is like, I'm sorry, but like for a show that you're going to release and just give to Google, and you have like no idea of how many people watch it, how much money it earns, and then expect them to like do you a solid on the back end.
And they were coming back to him with notes on like what the creative should be and that they should have certain elements to. I mean, like,
Can
that's
you have
fair
some
enough.
YouTube cameos in it?
Yeah, can you
Dan?
have KSI come in and like, I don't know, but it just yeah, my heart kind of like ached for him a little bit. I felt that, and he also talked about how he was kind of like playing the game, and again, because of that basically I'm gay video, he was doing a lot of stuff for like YouTube corporate like LGBT campaigns and being on billboards and
went to Davos.
Yeah, did like a lot of extra cred to kind of.
He was like one half in Succession world, like talking to billionaires, just hoping they'd fund his show.
He was being the good boy for YouTube, and then they just kind of didn't end up doing it, which is very sad. And that would be pretty demoralizing for anyone, especially someone who was maybe trying to make that leap away from YouTube but still like honoring that platform. And I think that's something Dan and Phil have both done really well, is like really honor how they kind of came up and give back to their audience. So I actually think I totally understand his POV of why he wanted it to be on YouTube, for that like full circle moment, and to kind of make a case for YouTube being, a competitor to television, which I would say it is.
A replacement, some would say.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway.
Well, all of this video, all of that's to say that the title is a classic piece of misdirection, in that Dan's not actually quitting YouTube. He's actually announcing his return, and he then produces a series of videos which he's like, I'm doing this on my terms, I'm hiring a crew, I'm going to like share the creative responsibility, and it's a case where he releases, for his sort of content cadence, quite a lot of content in the next few years. Like, he brings back Top Dan reviews. There's stuff about him doing like internet commentary about like trends on TikTok, a whole bunch of like sort of
he's trying new
Dan
formats.
Content. Exactly. Louise even comes back. She has a kid now.
Diva.
I mean,
She's
like
got two.
Oh, two. There we go.
Yeah, I follow her on TikTok.
Oh, sweat. We get like a whole sort of update on things on the channel. And it all sort of culminates on his personal channel, is that he does a solo live comedy show, which is called We're All Doomed, which I watched yesterday.
Oh.
And I thought, like, sort of all of the post basically gay stuff, I thought it was quite enjoyable. It was, as I mentioned before, very funny to see him do like quite serious, like, climate change is bad, media is spying on you, very much like a reminiscent of like Bo Burnham's Inside in themes, but to have the Dan and Phil fandom basically just scream and laugh and just be like, this is the funniest thing ever. And so I was like, I don't know, like, I think Dan is specifically like very obviously thankful that he has this audience that supports him do all this stuff. But it is really interesting because you're like, well, does he feel like he needs to like maintain some of the like the callbacks and the Dan and Phil of it all to make people enjoy this stuff?
Yeah, to make people like want to buy tickets.
Yeah, and I think he balances it pretty well, to be honest. Like, I'm sure if I watched like the Dan videos in 2011 and then I was still a fan of the channel and I was hearing him talk about how like YouTube is like destroying a generation, I'm like, that's a bit of a leap, but it seems from the fan reaction, and the video has a bunch of views, it seems like he's pretty successfully like grown his audience with his content, which is one of the things we even talk about on this podcast. We're like, can you as a YouTuber grow and do different things, or are you just stuck basically recreating the same popular content that made you a YouTuber in the first place? I
think it's a challenge. I don't know, that question maybe was rhetorical, but as we've sort of discussed and we've seen different kind of examples of, it's a bit touch and go, isn't it? It's a bit of a roll of the dice. It's a sort of a mix between who you originally cultivate as your audience, kind of like what kind of people do you have, what kind of parasocial relationship do you have, and can you take them on the journey? But I think there is something to the fact that even though like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we're watching Dan tell like kind of short stories and include like cutaway skits to a full like comedy special about like climate change and like that's still like it's still the same guy. There's still the same sort of core style of humor. It's a very different format. It's obviously much more extended and everything, but it's still, I'm like, that's still the same
I agree.
person.
Yeah. And like we said with Phil, I think that the authenticity of them both is like ultimately like the bedrock of why the content is so appealing.
People can connect to who, like, to their personalities.
Yes.
I mean, and like, not to be parasocial, but like, I've been watching Dan for over 10 years and I don't know the guy, right? Like, I don't actually know him, but through the parasocial magic of YouTube, I feel like I have a sense of who this person is. And I feel, like I said, that those videos that I watched 10 years ago and that, you know, his videos and content that he's bringing out more recently into now, I'm like, yeah, that's the same person. And again, I want to point out that he put this comedy special up for free. It's not paywalled behind YouTube Premium or subscribes only or Patreon. He put that up for free. And I think that's pretty, obviously you make ad revenue on these videos.
I don't know if he could go back to YouTube Originals after his video being like, they suck, and then be like, but what if this one was on Premium?
I mean,
I'm sure they wouldn't care.
The thing is,
I think
the thing about YouTube is that, like any company, even if there's, I think, a bit of like a falling out or a bit of a loss of love, you can still come back to that relationship because leadership changes, people change, and ultimately, like, they're good for the platform. They're a true and good representation of the platform, and they bring audience members.
Yep.
There are people who spend hours and hours and hours watching Dan and Phil content on YouTube, and so YouTube can't really turn their nose up at that. You know what I mean?
But yeah, so that's the last video on Dan's channel, and it brings us to our overall thoughts on Dan. And I think that, yeah, from a comedic perspective, he's like the dark to Phil's light, and it allows the content on this channel to be a bit more edgier, maybe a bit more to my personal taste, so I did enjoy it in that sense.
We've spent quite a bit of time over the last week of you turning to me at multiple points throughout the week going, am I the Dan or am I the Phil?
I don't think I've ever seriously said I'm the Phil.
No, you think I'm the Phil.
Yeah.
But
you're the Phil. No?
I mean,
do you want to be the Dan? I can be the Phil.
No, I'm happy to be either. It's sort of like asking someone. Well, no, it's not, because remember there's that thing going around where it's like, are you the Shrek or are you the donkey? It's not. It's not the same thing. I don't think.
I'm the Shrek.
Anyway.
One other note, just when you're mentioning the boys, Anthony from Smosh is clearly quite tight with Dan because he is always commenting, gassing him up in the comments. But at some point in the Smosh reacquisition, they changed his channel to just be called Smosh Alike. So now it just looks like the Smosh corporate, like, social media manager is doing these
15
comments
years
with
ago,
like,
it's like, great
I
video,
love you,
buddy.
bro. But to bring us back, overall.
Your thoughts?
No, I enjoy Dan's content. I think
Would you subscribe?
Yes, definitely now.
Wow.
I think the earlier, like the super post Shane Dawson edginess stuff, like a lot of that is, I don't think, as funny as Shane, and I don't think that there's like a pure comedic talent like Trisha Paytas, you know, if we're ranking our Mount Rushmore of YouTube comedy. But
he's
I still
not
think
the world's fastest talker.
No, definitely not. But I think that there's a really good, in the latter half, connection between sort of what the message of the video is, what Dan's personal viewpoints are, and what's funny. Like, he synthesizes all of that in an enjoyable way.
Yeah, he's a very talented creative, and like kind of in an all-rounder way.
Yeah.
Because he's making stuff like this, and then, you know, obviously involved in the creation of like their stage shows, which have like musical numbers and is a very different like format.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that next week. But yeah, it's pretty great. And I said it in the beginning, but yeah, I've been subscribed to Dan for a really long time. And yeah.
And you remain subscribed.
I remain subscribed. I think he's like he's probably on like my Mount Rushmore of YouTubers. There's probably like 30 of them. But like, yeah, this is an episode that I was obviously always planning to do in our kind of episode timeline, and I just moved it up a little bit because of obvious recent news. I was like, now is the time.
And yeah, was there anything else you wanted to... should probably say that in, say, 2017, Dan stopped straightening his hair.
Oh, yeah.
In a marked improvement, and much like Phil, has a huge hair glow up. And now he also has curly hair, but he has it in the gay mullet. That's what we know it as.
Yeah.
Your brother has one, you know.
Not my brother catching strays on the pod.
I know, no, it looks good. Like the
it looks
curly
good.
hair looks
He
really
gets
good.
compliments on it all the time. Every time he's in my content, people are just like, "Wow, his hair's so beautiful," and I'm like, "I'm right here." No, it's fine.
Okay, cool. That is the end of this episode of Rewind Time. At the end of each episode, I ask what we're subscribing to this week.
Max, what are you subscribing to?
I am subscribing to Below Deck Mediterranean.
Wow.
Which is a new season of the Below Deck franchise, spin-off Mediterranean.
We've
as you'd
definitely
imagine.
subscribed to Below Deck before. 100%.
No, but there's a new season. So
exactly. No, completely different.
But yeah, Aisha's back.
Amazing.
Our goat. They have insane Australian celebrities that I feel like, well, not celebrities, sorry, like micro nepo celebrities that we will conceivably run into in the course of our lives.
Yeah,
so
we don't go to the
that.
eastern suburbs that often. So
yeah, I'm trying to up the eastern suburbs in my life, but that's for another day. But yeah, Below Deck Med, that's what I'm subscribing to. What about you?
I'm subscribing to the phrase "fuck my chungus life."
Okay, wow.
It's been a vocal stim for me, I would say, in the last week. You've been doing it too.
Well, you've infected me with it as well.
It's like a disease. It's going to be like one of those things like memes, like Doge and stuff like that, where I feel like I'm going to look back on this in like a few months.
I'm already looking at it now like that.
I'm already looking at it kind of like this is going to be really cringe, but it's so fun to say. And every time something just mildly inconvenient happens to me, I get to go, fuck my fucking chungus life. Like I found an email in my old email inbox that I was devastated to find. I don't even know how it went to that inbox, but yeah, it was really sad. And so I read it and I went, fuck my fucking chungus life. It's kind of like the research says that when you like stub your toe when you're injured, if you like swear, it like reduces the pain.
Yeah, okay.
Psychologically. So I think when things happen, saying fuck my chungus life.
The literature. Saying fuck my chungus life decreased pain by 40%.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I feel like Dan would agree with me.
That is crazy. I don't know how I'm going to put that in the chapters, but anyway, that's it for this week of Rewind Time. Thank you everyone for listening. Part 2 of the Dan and Phil trilogy. And we'll be back with we'll figure it out.
Phrenology.
We are going to be back next week with the episode on the Dan and Phil creative duo.
Mm-hmm.
And in that one, we'll be talking about, I think, sort of the wider fandom perception of Dan and Phil. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, because
we haven't really discussed.
It's a lot to unpack and try.
We'll be saving that for next week.
That's for next week.
Thank you everyone for listening. You can rate and review us on Spotify.
Please do if you want other people to subscribe.
Or wherever you get your podcasts. You can like the video on YouTube and feel free to leave any comments on things you'd like us to talk about for next week's episode. Otherwise, that's it. Lucy, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.